This is the spectacular story of Captain Julian Vance, a young man no one believed in, who shaped his own destiny defying impossible circumstances to forge the most feared crew the ocean had ever seen. Captain Julian Vance stood on the deck of a rotting ship, adjusting his impeccably tailored jacket. He was 28, young, ambitious, and completely out of place on the filthy wooden boards of his new vessel. He had not bought this ship with gold, but had won it just days ago in a high-stakes game of cards. His opponent had been Captain Silas Vane, a notorious pirate lord who thought Julian was just an immature, arrogant young boy. However, Julian was no fool. He had memorized every card played and easily trapped the pirate lord in a losing hand. Winning the ship seemed like a grand victory at the time. In reality, the prize was a terrible trap. The ship, known as the Rusting Gull, was falling apart. The crew was a group of angry, starving rejects who hated their new captain. A hulking 45-year-old sailor named Kalen was the angriest of them all. Kalen crept up behind Julian in the dark, holding a sharp knife to slit the young captain's throat. But Julian did not turn around in fear. Instead, he casually stepped aside. Kalen tripped over a hidden rope Julian had tied across the deck just minutes before. Julian had known about the mutiny for 2 full days. He had read the angry whispers of his men like an open book, waiting for the perfect moment to act. Before Kalen could recover and attack again, a loud booming sound echoed across the dark water. The crew froze, thinking a violent storm was breaking. But there was no sign of a storm. A massive shape suddenly emerged from the morning fog, towering over their broken vessel. It was not a Royal Navy warship hunting pirates, as they all immediately feared. It was a merchant galleon, commanded by a wealthy captain named Bartholomew Higgins. Normally a merchant ship meant easy treasure and food for desperate pirates. This merchant ship, however, was heavily armed with dozens of cannons pointing directly at the Rusting Gull. The starving pirate crew panicked, dropping their weapons and preparing to surrender. They were outnumbered 10-1, and their own cannons were too rusted to even load. Kalen yelled for the men to abandon ship and swim for their lives in the freezing water. Julian calmly raised his hand and ordered the crew to stay exactly where they were. He commanded them to go below deck and bring up the last barrels of their rotten, maggot-filled food. The crew thought the stress of impending death had finally broken the young captain's mind. Instead of throwing the ruined food into the sea to lighten the ship, Julian ordered them to spread the foul-smelling mess all over the main deck. He then called for Corin, the ship's cook, who had been hiding in the kitchen. Julian did not want Corin to cook a final desperate meal for the doomed men. He wanted the cook to instantly become a master chemist. Julian handed Corin a basket of crushed red berries and a bucket of grey ash from the cold cooking fire. He instructed the cook to smear the odd mixture all over the faces and arms of the confused crew. Kalen angrily refused, thinking it was a humiliating joke to mock them before they died. Julian quickly pointed out that the merchant ship was already loading its cannons to blow them out of the water. The crew realized this was not a joke, but a bizarre plan for survival. The ash made their skin look dead and grey, while the red berry juice created the terrifying illusion of horrible bleeding sores. Julian was not preparing his men for a glorious bloody fight against the merchant ship. He was turning them into helpless victims of a highly contagious, deadly plague. He ordered his navigator to climb the main mast and raise a specific flag from their supplies. It was not the black pirate flag they usually flew to scare their innocent victims. It was a bright yellow flag, the universal symbol for a ship under strict medical quarantine. The massive merchant galleon pulled up alongside the tiny, rotting pirate ship. Captain Higgins stood on his safe, clean deck, ready to order his men to fire their cannons and destroy the pirates forever. But as he looked down at his target, his confident, victorious smile vanished completely. He did not see a crew of dangerous killers ready to board his precious ship. He saw a deck covered in filth, and a crew of men groaning in pain with grey skin and red sores. Julian stood at the front of his ship, leaning heavily against the railing to look incredibly weak and near death. He coughed loudly and yelled to the merchant captain that they were suffering from the crimson sweats. Julian screamed that the crew was about to swim to the rich merchant ship for help, as they did not have medicine or coin for treatments. Higgins panicked for the fear of getting the disease and asked his crew to appease Julian at all costs. Higgins immediately cancelled the order to fire his cannons, fearing the smoke would spread the infected air. He ordered the ship to sail away, but the wind made things slow. He ordered his men to drop some coin and medicines to appease Julian as they slowly sailed away. Higgins ordered his men to throw a chest with coin and medicine onto the pirate ship. The chest landed safely on the deck of the Rusting Gull with a loud crash. The merchant ship slowly sailed away. The pirate crew stood in shocked silence as the dangerous merchant galleon disappeared into the morning horizon. They cautiously opened the wooden chest, expecting to find cheap medical supplies or useless old clothes. The chest was actually overflowing with shiny gold coins and highly expensive medicine. Julian had defeated a heavily armed enemy without firing a single weapon or shedding a drop of blood. The crew stared at their young captain with a completely new understanding. He was not a foolish aristocrat playing a dangerous game of pirates on the open ocean. He was a brilliant strategist who could turn a deadly disaster into a massive fortune with just his mind. Kalen looked at the shining gold, then looked down at the sharp knife he had dropped on the deck earlier. The hulking sailor realized that killing Julian would have been the absolute biggest mistake of his life. Julian had not just saved them all from the merchant ship's deadly cannons, he had saved himself from the mutiny by proving he was exactly the brilliant leader they desperately needed. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next quest. A like and a subscribe will help us stay connected with you, also be a great source of encouragement for our team.